taking the Triple Crown to Bologna in 2022, this year, Ducati are the team to beat, especially when it comes to hardware. The fact that there was at least one Ducati rider on the podium at all 20 rounds proved that the Desmosedici can now be strong in all weather conditions as well as on all track layouts. Starting 2023, also on top, Ducati had a very positive 3 days of pre-season test in Malaysia earlier this month. There was plenty of new hardware at display from all manufacturers, and in this video, let's dive deep into all the new tech we can expect to see on MotoGP bikes this season. Starting with Ducati. Ducati did not have radical redesigns in any area of their bike, and why would they? They already have a bike which works on all tracks, in all weather conditions and more importantly, for multiple riding styles. So why mess with something which is already miles ahead of the competition? There was, however, a new spec engine being run by the factory boys and the Pramac duo, and if we are to go by Jorge Martin's words, this season too isn't going to be fun for the other manufacturers. While the factory boys downplayed the difference between their respective 2022 engines and the new one, Martin seemed particularly impressed with the smooth power delivery. Now that may be partly because all of last year, he was stuck with Ducati's aggressive 2022 spec engine while Pecco bailed out at the 11th hour and opted to run the 2021.5 spec engine. Being the aero leaders of MotoGP, Ducati had plenty of new bits to test. However, one common thing across all GP23s on all 3 days was that they all ran the new fairing, which is a bit taller and a bit narrower than the outgoing model. The taller design will definitely help the rider tuck in completely, while the narrow design will also help reduce drag in a straight line. Ducati's front wings also seem to have grown a bit, but the face of the bike is still a very recognizable Ducati face which we have gotten accustomed to over the last few years. The bottom half of the fairing is where things seem different. After testing the exact copy of Aprilia's ground effect fairing in Valencia, Ducati brought their interpretation of ground effect fairing with a very empty-looking bottom half. Although not as sharp, this new fairing is clearly based on the concept of ground effect, and as you'll see through this video, ground effect seems to be the theme of this year's Aero, with all 5 manufacturers trying their hands on the concept. Although this is all we saw from Ducati in Malaysia, the fact remains that Gigi Dall'Igna admitted over the winter that they would not bring all the bits of GP23 for the first test. That can only mean that there could be more innovative bits at the upcoming Portimao test. Next up, Aprilia. Going by the test results, Aprilia seems to be the only bike which can somewhat take the fight to the Ducatis. And if they do manage to improve on last year's RSGP despite losing their concessions, that would be a big punch in KTM's face, given how much they dipped after they lost their concessions. Aprilia had an entirely revised RSGP featuring a new chassis, a new swing arm, a new tail unit, new aero, and a new exhaust, with a new engine scheduled to make an appearance at the upcoming Portimao test. Being the first ones to introduce ground effect fairing in MotoGP, Aprilia have the first mover advantage, and this year, they have further fine-tuned their fairing with subtle curves and a redesigned and repositioned front wing. Both Maverick Vinales and Aleix Espargaro seemed very happy and satisfied with the efforts of the Nola factory over the winter, but both the riders admitted that the gap to Ducati is still very significant. Both factory riders are expecting the new 2023 spec engine to take them one step closer to Ducati. However, with only 2 days of testing left before lights out at Portimao, choosing the right engine spec will be absolutely crucial for Aprilia's 2023 season. Another new innovation seen on the Aprilia were the 2 slits on the top of the front fairing. These slits are being thought to be a revival of the S-ducts, a concept banned in Formula 1 since 2009. The S-duct concept, in layman terms, is having a duct resembling the shape of the alphabet S running through the vehicle so that the air can travel through the vehicle rather than around it, thereby reducing drag by a significant amount. The S shape of the duct increases the downforce, thus providing double benefit with zero compromises. Next in the list, Yamaha. Looking at the top speed charts over 3 days of testing, it would appear that the inline 4 gods have finally answered Fabio Quartararo's prayers. Not only is Yamaha's 2023 engine fast on the top end, it is also quick to get up there, and that had Fabio Quartararo and Franco Morbidelli smiling on the first 2 days of the test. Also on display were a new chassis and 2 new aggressive aero concepts, one of which is a completely new design featuring front wings similar to what we saw on the Ducati in 2016. Although overall, things seem to be positive, there are 2 major concerns in the Yamaha camp. Franco Morbidelli did point out that the 2023 M1, albeit faster, is becoming more aggressive and is losing the trademark smooth character. And the bigger concern is what happened on the final day of the test. During qualifying simulations, Fabio Quartararo discovered that despite the gained horsepower, they seemed to have lost performance when it comes to time attack. Fabio labeled the performance on new rubber as a disaster and left Malaysia with the hope of finding a fix for this at Portimao. Next up, KTM. Sticking to their new philosophy for the most part, KTM brought small evolutions of different components of the RC16. Among the new parts being tested, there was a 2023 spec engine being tested by all KTM and gas riders. There were multiple chassis concepts to test, and Brad Binder liked them both but wanted a chassis which was somewhere in the middle of the two concepts. Binder said that one of the concepts allowed for better turning while the other was a massive improvement in braking area. Fighting strongly in the aero wars, KTM brought 3 different aero packages which were being tested by both KTM riders as well as by gas rider Paul Espargaro. So far, we had seen other teams testing aero packages featuring either the ground effect design or the downwash ducts. However, one of KTM's 3 aero packages featured a combination of both, and this particular concept is being rumored to be developed with help from Red Bull Advanced Technologies. And finally, Honda. Looking back at the last 3 seasons, and hearing the harsh comments of Marc Marquez for the first time, everybody knew that this test was absolutely crucial for Honda. Honda brought boatloads of new parts to Malaysia as Marc Marquez started the test with 4 different bikes to his disposal, including the one from 2022, and one of the bikes even had a few bits from the 2021 bike. The list of new parts includes a new engine, 2 different chassis, 2 different aero concepts, a redesigned air intake, a new seat and tail unit, and a new exhaust system. Honda also dipped their feet in the ground effect aero but mostly stuck to testing the aero with downwash ducts. Despite not finding any of the concepts competitive enough to fight for the title, Marquez had eliminated 3 bikes by the 3rd day of testing and seemed to have decided the direction of Honda's development for 2023. Joan Mir was also seen riding the identical setup on the last day, thus confirming the direction furthermore. I wanted to go a lot more in depth with the subtle differences between last year's and this year's bikes, but this video has already gotten too long. If you want to watch the deep dive into what's new on each bike, let me know in the comments below. And before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing if you aren't already subscribed.